kind of let your head settle. I know we gave you a lot of information this morning, a lot of information to sort of just start giving you an introduction, I suppose, really, as to where we are in Scotland. We focused last time on the sort of more global context, and this time was really starting to bring it into, well, what's going on in Scotland? What's Scotland's emissions like? Where are they coming from? The next presentation had stuff about the changing face of sort of power and electricity and how things are needing to move on there. And then really the last presentation focusing a bit more on kind of some of the different levels of where change happens, whether it's being driven by communities, by government, by local government, and by business, and the different responsibilities that people have to help drive change forward. They were a light touch. They were a quick introduction. I know a lot of people, it left people with a lot of questions, but that's okay at this stage because we are still really early in the process of what we're doing here over the sort of 6 weekends that we're going to meet together. It was a quick introduction to help you start to understand some of the challenges that are involved. What we're going to be doing this afternoon now is actually hearing a few more sort of short presentations that are again designed to give you an early introduction, I suppose, to some of the key topics and some of the key themes that we're going to be exploring a lot more in weekends 3 and 4. Now, we've already told you that we're going to be dividing up into sort of separate streams in weekend 3 and 4, so that some of the members will be taking a much more deep dive into some topics. So the topics we're going to be looking at are things like work and travel. So there'll be like a third of the group taking a really deep dive and really starting to understand what are the big challenges there before starting to come up with recommendations. So we've got work and travel, we've got home and communities, and we've got diet and lifestyles. But one thing we really want to do this weekend is give all of you that sort of early introduction to the topics, so you can start thinking about what's going to be really important for when the groups do that deeper dive, that really deep consideration, what's going to be most important for them to really focus on, and what's most important to be looking at ideas of change. So that's what we're going to be doing this afternoon. We're going to be learning a little bit about each of the topics, and we'll work on them this afternoon and tomorrow to identify kind of priority areas that we want the groups who are going to be working on them later to really focus on. So, there will be introductory talks, but hopefully you'll find them really interesting and really informative, and they'll start helping to shape your discussions. So I know some of you today have had a bit of a frustrating time with the Jamboards. Hopefully people are starting to get used to them, and just like you've all got used to using Zoom and are getting better at that and understanding how it works and what it can do, then hopefully this afternoon you'll get the chance to have a little bit more time on the Jamboards and hopefully be able to sort of get more familiar with them. And if it doesn't work for you, that's okay as well. The facilitators are there to help. The other members of your group can help. It's about working collectively to just sort of make sure that we end up with some good discussion and some good notes from that discussion, so that we can prioritize what we want to do moving forward. So I think that's really all I have to say. And I'm going to hand over now back to Ian, who's going to give us a bit of an introduction to the first topics we're going to be hearing about this afternoon.
Thanks, Kayla. I'm still waking up from that music. I was so soporific. It's lovely. But anyway, we need to shake ourselves up. As you've said, the idea of this whole afternoon session is to introduce you, to get you much more familiar with these 3 streams that you'll be diving into. And those 3 streams, as Kayla said, is work and travel, homes and communities, and diet and lifestyle. And I'll kind of unpack those for you. But they've been chosen because they represent some of the most important areas where change needs to happen in Scotland if we're going to tackle the climate emergency. So over the next 2 weekends, as you've heard, you'll be split into 3 groups. and each group will learn about one of these 3 streams in more detail. I guess the thing to emphasize really is that these streams are broad, and perhaps more importantly, they're overlapping. So you'll find lots of things that you learn about will impact on other areas. So for example, recommendations that you might make on work and how we travel and work might also impact on how we use our homes, for example. But that's kind of the point, because any of the actions that we decide to take to reduce our emissions or prepare for the impact of climate change can't be taken on their own. So as members of the Assembly, you have the important job really of bringing all these things, all these different strands together to decide what the best recommendations are for how Scotland should move forward. For each of the topics, we will ask you to consider 2 main challenges. Now, for the first session this afternoon, you're going to hear from Sarah Cham on the topic of work. And the questions that we'd like you to consider, I'm just going to share my screen here and I'll show you them. Let me just, so hopefully you can see this. Let me just bring it up full screen. So as we heard, the first of the topics is work and travel. And the first question there is, how should Scotland change its working practice to tackle the climate emergency in an effective and fair way? And the second question relating to that section of particularly about work relates to, how should Scotland support people to change work to tackle the climate emergency in an effective and fair way? And I'm going to stop share screen because we've got a video to show you from Sarah on this topic. So we heard Sarah unpack a little bit about the broad context of work. Now, the second half of that same stream is going to focus on travel. And the key challenges here, if I just again go back to sharing my screen. It's probably here. Just make sure I've got the right one. They all look very similar. So yes, okay. So this is the travel ones. So the first of the 2 travel ones are, how should Scotland change how it travels? So it's just hidden under my little camera there. Okay, I've got it now. So how should Scotland change how it travels by land to tackle the climate emergency in a fair and effective way? And you might be guessing what's coming next. The next one is, how should Scotland change how it travels by air to tackle the climate emergency in a fair and effective way? See what we're getting at there. And we've got another video to play.
Yeah, we are. So we're going to go into the breakout rooms and give you some time to just sort of reflect on the 2 presentations you've heard and start considering, well, what really are, what is going to be most important for the groups to focus on in order to achieve fair and effective change in Scotland. So we'll just go into the breakout rooms, please. Come back into the room. We'll just let the rest of the breakout rooms catch up with us as they're making their transition back in. Hopefully you've, had some interesting chats and started to think about really, in terms of work and travel, what are the fundamental, real key challenges, the things that we're going to have to get right if we're going to be able to make fair and effective change to tackle the climate emergency. So I'm now going to hand over to Ian just to introduce the next topics we're going to be talking about.
Thanks for that, Kayla. So the next topic that we're going to be talking about is homes, or the next stream is homes in communities. And we're going to begin with a short presentation from Jeanette Webb, who will introduce you to 2 of the key challenges facing Scotland's homes. So let me share my screen and we can have a look at the questions for that. So you can see homes and communities there. The first of the questions: how should Scotland change its existing homes to tackle the climate emergency in an effective and fair way? And then the second question in the homes section, how should Scotland change how it builds new homes to tackle the climate emergency in an effective and fair way? And if I stop sharing, then we should be able to hear from Jeanette. Yeah, perhaps we can take a minute really just to think about what you've heard, note down what you see as the key challenges facing Scotland in relation to homes, and then we'll pick that up for the next part of the stream. So just the last few seconds, and then we'll move on. So hopefully that's given a quick chance. Next, we're going to hear from Daisy Narayanan, who's going to introduce us to the topic of communities. And there's going to be two key challenges, two key questions that we see there. So let me just share my screen and get you those questions. So the questions are, let me move this out of the way. That's better, right. So how should Scotland change how it plans its communities to tackle the climate emergency in a fair and effective way? And the second question in this community streams, how should Scotland change how it delivers community services to tackle the climate emergency in an effective and fair way? And we're now going to hear from Daisy and from a video.
Thank you very much to Daisy for that video. We're going to go back into our breakout rooms now. So if production could send people away, and we'll see you back here soon.
Start again in a moment. So we've got, as we said, one more lot of these short introductory presentations. And they're really about people starting to think, what is some of the key issues, the key big problems that we're going to have to address in some of these different sectors, or what are the stumbling blocks for us in terms of making what might be fair and effective change to tackle the climate emergency. So people are giving you some starter points, but I think the other thing to remember is you all have lots of knowledge yourself as well. You know what living in Scotland is like, so, and where some of those challenges might be if we're trying to make changes that will actually help us address the climate emergency. So I'm going to pass over to Ian to introduce the last of our sections.
Yeah, thanks. Hope that 5-minute break refreshed you all and that you're ready for this final session of the day. It's the session that we're going to introduce you to the final of our 3 streams, and that final one is diet and lifestyle. And making that introduction to the lifestyle topic is going to be Mike Berners-Lee, who we're going to hear from in just a minute. But before that, I just want to introduce you to the two key questions that we've got for you in the diet and lifestyle section, and you can see them coming up now. So the first of those questions is this: how should Scotland manage its materials and resources to tackle the climate emergency in an effective and fair way? So that's about materials and resources. And the second one is, how should Scotland change how it buys things to tackle the climate emergency in a fair and effective way? So we're going to hear, we're going to go to a presentation now from Mike Berners-Lee to hear about that in more detail. If we could just maybe take a minute just to think about what you've heard there from Mike Berners-Lee, note down what you see as some of the key challenges facing Scotland in relation to the lifestyle element, and then we'll go on to the next part, but give you a minute to do that. So last but not least, we're going to hear about our diets, how we use our land in Scotland, and the role these things can play in tackling the climate emergency. We're going to hear in a few seconds from Pete Smith. But if I can just go and share my screen, I can bring up the questions that we've got in this particular one, this particular final section. Just check we're on the right bit. Yeah. So this is the second part in relation to diet and land. How should Scotland rebalance its diet to tackle the climate emergency in an effective and fair way. So this one is about rebalancing our diets. And then the second question, how should Scotland change how it uses its land to tackle the climate emergency in an effective and fair way? So the second part is more on the land question. So on that, I'm going to pass across to Pete Smith, who's going to talk to you about land and diet.
Pete, were you wanting to say anything, or will I just start the video?
Yeah, just go ahead and start the video. Thank you.
Ian, okay, well, thanks to Professor Pete Smith for that video. So we're going to go back into our breakout rooms now for the final breakout room session of the day, and then we'll all come back here just before 4 o'clock to wrap up the day. Do remember that the speakers are here if you want them to come into your room.
All that's left to say now is a massive thank you to all of you for your amazing hard work today, your commitment, and all those conversations. In our part, we're going to be looking over those jam boards that you've been working on today. We'll look at those overnight, and tomorrow you'll find out what's come up in each of the different groups. But on that note, I'll pass across to Kelly to draw the proceedings to close.
Brilliant. Thank you very much, Ian. So again, I just want to reiterate Ian's thanks for all of the work that you've done today. We know that and appreciate that it's quite heavy learning in some places. So thank you for taking the time to listen and to reflect and to discuss in your groups. Of course, we hope that you'll have a bit of time maybe to reflect overnight, and tomorrow we'll be coming back. We'll be consolidating a little bit of that learning. And of course, facilitators will be there to support you as needed as well. Just to say, videos that you've seen today have now all been uploaded to the LMS and are also available via the website if at any point you want to go back and you want to watch them. And you'll also be receiving email instructions about joining again for tomorrow. So if you could please ensure that you are logged on early tomorrow, so it'll be open from 9:30 and ready to go for a 10 a.m. start. That'd be brilliant. But yeah, just thank you again for everything that you've done today, and we look forward to seeing you tomorrow. Hope you have a lovely and restful evening.